Hello, and welcome to Film Slam Stream's post-film conversation for Namaste Yoga. My name is Eric Siler, and I'm an instructor of film, media arts, and communications, as well as moderator for this conversation. We're very pleased to be joined by the director of Namaste Yoga, Ravi Chand. Ravi is joining us from Melbourne, Australia. Hello, Ravi, and welcome.
Hi, Eric. Wonderful to be here. Before we begin, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands which I come from today, which is the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nations, and I pay my respects to their elders, past and present.
Well, thank you for that acknowledgement. And we are so glad that you are with us today to talk about your work. Namaste Yoga, wonderful, delightful film, educational, insightful, and so forth. I know this is part of funding to help underrepresented upper represented groups. Can you elaborate on that in terms of how this film was conceived?
Sure. So there was a call out for a national initiative, which 4 creators got chosen, and I was one of the lucky ones. And so the way that it works here in Australia, we have state funding agencies and we have federal funding agencies and also our broadcasters. So Namaste Yoga was one of 4 projects that were funded by the national broadcaster ABC and our national screen agency called Screen Australia. And the whole idea of the initiative was to champion underrepresented voices. The initiative was called the Kaleidoscope Project, and the whole idea was the whole idea of the initiative was to champion voices that are underrepresented. So, and also opening up audiences to voices that they've never heard of before, and in an authentically diverse manner.
Well, great. So I guess you could have gone a number of different directions. You decided to talk about the Indian culture and also infuse that with yoga. Tell us, why did you go with that approach?
Well, I guess talking about it on a few different levels. So there's this misnomer that India is just one kind of place and one sort of demographic, where there's actually thousands of languages that are actually spoken. And then also for me, for my ancestors, I was born in Fiji and an Indian heritage, and the way that our ancestors got into Australia was that they were tricked by the British and brought into sugar plantations and enslaved. And so I guess our culture and our traditions are slightly different to those in directly in India as well. But then there's also, I guess, the themes of it being very indigenous Indian and Hindu as well. And so I really wanted to talk to, I guess, a lived experience that I had when I was a kid, when I remember going to my first yoga class, and you'll notice that I pronounce it as yoga and it's not yoga. And the way that we say that, because pronunciation in, this isn't to call you out, this is just for anybody to know, because pronunciation in Sanskrit and pronunciation is very important to us as well, because there's very specific reasons behind that as well. So I remember going to my first yoga class when I was, probably about, I'd say maybe guessing like 8 years old, and I just had this awful feeling. I couldn't put my finger on it. But I just felt very icky, and it was just this white yoga teacher that was teaching me about, my own culture, and I didn't realize it was my own indigenous culture, but doing it to me in a condescending way, almost exotifying me, but as well as belittling me in the same way, this air of superiority about them. And I couldn't put my finger on it, but I just didn't feel right about it, and it's always stayed with me. And so when I went to go make Namaste Yoga, I've been talking to my elders for a very long time about the representation of yoga. And yoga in the Western world is known as just being the asanas, which is another word of saying just the postures, and it's about fitness and beauty and, looking sexy in your lycra, but it's certainly not, that's the very opposite of what yoga is about. Yoga is something that's a lot more spiritual and grounding to the essence of who you really are.
Interesting. Okay, that's good to know that it was inspired by a true occurrence in your life with that. So the film itself, yeah, we don't really see in the Seoul Film Slam program many films from Australia, which is really, I really welcome this. So can you give us a little bit of insight on putting this together in Australia, in terms of casting this, in terms of, finding Indian characters and diverse characters to try to represent what you want to try to conceive. Was that easy, difficult, or how was that, whole casting process?
Yeah, I guess from the outset, I wrote it, co-wrote it as well, and so I just wanted to make write a story that was true to my lived experience, and I had the belief that we'd be able to find those cast for it. You'll notice with Namaste Yoga, the acting is very different from what you'd find in a lot of traditional sort of children's program. It's not that, and there's nothing wrong with this, but there's not that kind of slapstick sort of comedy. It's grounded in a lot of truth and real emotion through what the characters are done, and that's very purposely done. I guess I did have a few people that when they read the script, they were like, this is a wonderful script, but geez, it's quite ambitious. And thinking about it now, like, not only was it the casting of the characters, but it's also the nuance of the story. And then on top of that, there was also, there's a fight scene in there. And then on top of that, there's also a dance scene in there. So we did a call out to actors, both professional and also those that were from the community, and we did a very big call out for to the community, not just for cast but for crew as well, because part of the process of what I do is having underrepresented voices. Really wanted to have not that representation just on screen, but behind the camera as well. So 50% of our crew were female, and the majority of our crew were Black, Indigenous, or people of color. And so when we went into the casting, children usually, when they do casting workshops or when they do performing, a lot of it is theatre based, and so the children sometimes can be really larger than life, which is great for theatre acting, but for screen it can be a little bit jarring. So went through a really big process to go far and wide as we can. We found Emil, who plays Shiv, and he has done acting before and he's quite comfortable with doing it. He's like we used to call him like an old man in a little man's body because he's just so wise and well structured. And Alora, who actually played Carly, that was her first audition ever. We found her without having any experience, and I knew that would take a lot of work, but I spent a lot of time with the kids as director playing games and getting them comfortable with each other and building their characters, and then eventually you saw the end product of what they're like. And what you didn't see was that when there were breaks from acting, they had gelled so well together. I had to separate them because they're poking each other like brother and sister. So the work was there, and they had this naturalism with them. So it was, and I guess Parvati, who actually plays the mother as well, she had a lot of, you could tell she's a professional classical Indian dancer and has acting background as well. She did a wonderful job, but the kids had no dance experience at all. So they went through dance and acting training to get this right. And every move is very specific. Like there's specific meanings to the way that they're all put together and the different sort of gestures. So the kids did a wonderful job. We worked really hard, and I'm really proud of them for what we achieved in the end.
Well, that's good. That's great that you can actually, find that talent there, and it came across well as it came across quite well. Now, in terms of, there's certain things there were certain elements you really want to have in a film, such as the traditional dress, such as the stereotypes and so forth. But one in particular, Harmony Day, is that an actual day that's celebrated, or is that something you created for the film?
No, so Harmony Day actually exists. So the idea behind or this initiative was that it was originally going to be released on Harmony Day, which is here in Australia. And there's a bit of a problematic reasoning and a bit of a problematic, I guess, idea behind Harmony Day. It was actually put together by the government in the time that were very conservative, and it was basically to almost like a PR aspect to say there's no we all live together in harmony. There's no problem here in Australia. No one's racist here in Australia. And of course, our Indigenous Australians here are amongst some of the worst treated in the world, and the living conditions that they have, and they were completely ignored. So I said I had a problem with actually having it on Harmony Day and not paying any respect to our Indigenous Australians. So when you see that focus pull of when it goes to a flag and then it goes to, it looks like an explorer, that flag is the Indigenous Australian flag, and that explorer is Captain Cook, who colonized Australia.
Okay, well, good. That's one of the many educational aspects of it. And one thing is that, children are children everywhere, in which there's bullying that goes on, and brother and sister interaction and so forth. So, which is good. It was really nice just to see I guess the slice of life in that sense that you presented with us in that sense. In terms of the rest of the characters in the film, I noticed it was kind of, I guess, limited in a way. Did you have a difficult time, or talk to us about the audition process, such as like the principal, the yoga teacher, and so forth, and getting them together? And you had an interracial couple as well too. So talk about that and completing the casting.
I guess finding the supporting sort of characters weren't as difficult, because there was when you go to the white sort of characters, there's a number of roles, there's a number of actors that are out there. The tricky part was when you see a yoga teacher, when an actor has an idea of a yoga teacher, when you see them on screen, they're very much a caricature. So the auditions that came in were a caricature. And so I worked quite hard with Lucy, who plays Miss Blanche, to really get some truth into her character of why she wasn't purposely trying to be destructive to the kids. She generally thought she was coming from a place of love and concern. But we had to keep the size of the classroom small and the extras small, because there is a limited budget that we had to work with as part of the initiative. So there's that challenge to make sure that everything kept within budget.
Great, really well done. So let's talk more about the production itself. How long did it take to shoot and edit? I know it's kind of a little challenging during the pandemic. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we I guess the whole entire process took about 2 years, and that was because we went in to shoot 3 times and got delayed because we had lockdowns, and lockdowns here in Melbourne, Australia, were probably the longest lockdowns in the world. I think we had something like 8 months of lockdown, and at particular times you couldn't go like a 5 kilometer radius or a 2 mile radius outside of your home. But I used that time every time we went into a delay. I used that to work more with our characters and our actors to develop them even further. The shoot went on for 5 days. So it was a 5-day shoot, and it was a very busy shoot. It was 22 pages, and it was really action packed, because for us here in Australia, we also have conditions for child actors as well. They can only be on set for 6 hours, and then they have to have a break every hour to 45 minutes. So you have to factor that into your shots and to shooting. And particularly when you have a cast of extras that are all children, they also have to have that as well. So there's a lot of juggling that happens as part of that process.
Okay. Oh, good. So once you got it all done, completed, it was part of the other films that were funded as well too, to show diversity and so forth. Tell us about the reception of this film, and give us some comparison to the other films that were made.
The other films are absolutely beautiful. They are very specific to their communities as well, and those filmmakers and producers and directors did a wonderful job for their communities. Namaste Yoga, as wise of feedback that we got from the community, it is what I expected to get, but the praise was phenomenal and really humbling. Like if you go on the Warrior Tribe Films website, you can see like the testimonials and the reviews that have come in from the community media, as well as community organizations as well. And they were saying like as the first, comments were saying like it's the first time they feel seen on Western TV, the most authentic portrayal of Hindu life on a Western screen, and they could tell the love and the care that was went into it. As someone that's not from the community, you'll see it and you can appreciate it and there's nuances in it. Someone from the community that watches it, they will know the amount of work that went into creating every little detail and nuance that's actually in there. Everything that you see in there, as with all films, but we were extra pedantic about the details that were in there as well.
Okay. Oh, great. And the people that the screening of this film, was it, I know you're on the film festival circuit. Did you have a public screening of it? Was it part of a broadcast in Australia? Tell us a little
Yeah, so it was broadcast on the national broadcaster here, and it's also available for on demand on their streaming service as well. It's geo-blocked to Australia. It's making its way around the world at the moment as part of the festival circuit. Got into other film festivals as well, and a few more to go. So it's been quite wonderful. But the greatest thing about it is at our premiere, we had a child psychologist that was on board for our entire production, and that child psychologist was there in case the children were triggered by anything, because there's bullying issues, there's issues of racism and a number of other things, in case the children were triggered by any of that. And also after the production as well, if they go, if they're in high school and there's a rerun of it and they get bullied because of the themes that they're in there, their parents can contact the psychologist can get in touch with us and with the broadcasters, and we can put a plan into action to make sure that those kids don't get bullied, or we actually take it down in the best interest of the kids. But I guess, I know it's a little bit off topic, but it was one of the most magical things that happened as part of Namaste Yoga was that at the premiere, we had our child psychologist that came, and she came to the premiere with her mum because she really wanted to watch it with her mum. And so afterwards, she contacted me and she said, she's in her mid-20s, and she said on the way home, it's the first time her mum and her have ever had a conversation about the racism and the things that she experienced as a child growing up, and what her mother had faced, and how they overcame that. And the reason, because it was Namaste Yoga was a talking point for them to open up that conversation. We're hearing that a number of times, which is a really big privilege for us, and we're very humbled by it.
Well, that's really interesting. So that's the power of film, being able to open doors and spark conversations like we're having today. And Namaste Yoga is certainly one of them that does that. What can we expect in the near future from you? Are you working on another project right now? What's next?
Yeah, so I've got a number of projects on my slate at the moment now. I guess the one that I'm leading with is a 3 times 1 hour documentary. It's called 5 Year Grandma. There's a pitch video that we've had it on Facebook for a little while, and it's developed quite a lot from them. When I originally pitched it, it was a web series, but we had well over 500,000 views and thousands of comments from around the world. So is now being developed in a 3 times 1 hour series. And the story is about a love letter to my 6-year-old son, about how I found out my maternal grandma, who I thought had passed away decades ago, was still alive and waiting for me in the same house in Fiji. And so I flew to Fiji and met her for the first time in 25 years, and she reconnected me to my culture, my language, and to myself. And so it's a love letter to my son about identity, belonging, and the importance of culture. I've also got a couple of feature films, a TV series that I'm working on, and also a web series as well.
Okay, well, great. Well, we look forward to hopefully seeing some more work from you. This has just been a really delightful conversation to get some insight on your film. Thank you so much for joining us, Ravi Chand, director of Namaste Yoga. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Eric.
And thank you to our audience for joining us for this important and invigorating conversation. For more information about any upcoming film festivals, please visit us at clevelandfilm.org. I'm Eric Siler. Thank you.